Welcome to the Birds and the Bees podcast. This is Braxton Dutson.
That's the key. People aren't talking about it.
Everybody needs to know that porn is not a documentary.
It's not like if we don't talk to kids about sex and sexuality, they're not going to hear about it. They're just not going to hear about it from us.
They have tons of questions, they just don't know how to ask them.
All you have to do is be one chapter ahead. You don't have to know everything. Just one chapter ahead of wherever your child is.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Birds and Bees podcast. I'm your host, Braxton Dutson, and today we've got a really awesome interview with you for Chelsea Holland, actually. I was able to talk with her. She's a doctor of human sexuality out in Colorado, and I got to sit down with her and talk with her about a topic that's really actually super broad. Going into it and talking with her about it, I wasn't quite sure we'd be able to tackle main points of this topic right off the bat, just because of how broad this topic is. We're talking about intimacy and building intimacy as a couple, as a partnership, and it can be really difficult to say, well, how do you build intimacy? Almost like, how do you survive in the wild? There's so many different things that you can do, and so many things you have to take into account. And just like I was saying, that first little bit, surviving in the wild, really, it depends on where you're at. And it kind of is the same with any type of relationship. Where are you at? Where do you need to start building your intimacy? And we had such a wonderful conversation. Specifically, we started talking about different things that she does with emotionally focused therapy. She brought in the 5 love languages, and even an activity that she does with couples that go see her, the rain check exercise. And we get into all that as we go through the episode here. But specifically for today, we're just covering some basic skills of how you can start changing the way that you and your partner interact in an intimate way, both physically and emotionally. And if you're listening to the show right now, I know we've just started, but if you enjoy what we've been doing on this podcast, I encourage you to head on over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a review. The reviews are such a simple process. You can write down a couple of your thoughts, the things that you like about the show, or what's been supportive for you, and leave a comment in a review. That really helps out the podcast reach more individuals, especially more couples that are trying to talk to their kids about sex and couples looking to build their relationship. That would really help out the podcast, as well as you can always give us a call and leave your thoughts as well. We'd love to listen to your comments. You can call us at 385-449-1818. and leave a voicemail with your comments. Please do. We'd love to hear from you. You can also interact with us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Birds and Bees podcast. I've got different things that I post up there along with the episodes. And if you have any questions on topics or things that you'd like to know, hop on there and let us know your thoughts. So without further ado, this is episode 8 of Birds and Bees podcast, Building Intimacy with Chelsea Holland, DHS. We hope you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here with Dr. Chelsea Holland, DHS MS. She's a sex therapist and a registered psychotherapist in the state of Colorado. She holds a doctorate degree in human sexuality and a master's of science in mental health counseling. And today we're going to be talking about couples and intimacy, how to build intimacy within a partnership. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited about our topic today.
I am too. This is going to be a great one.
Oh, yeah. So right off the bat, let's start talking a little bit about how intimacy versus the act of sex. The word intimate, I was intimate with this person, tends to come up, and we're using that interchangeably with the act of sex. What are some similarities and what are differences in between that?
Well, I think it's interesting, just even that word intimacy is usually we attach it to the sexual, and I think it's really important to make sure that we always know that there are different realms of intimacy. There's emotional intimacy and also sexual intimacy. And so usually when people say, like you had said, if you're intimate with someone, that usually falls in the category of the sexual intimacy. And the way that differs from the act of sex, because usually when we say we've had sex with someone, the go-to is usually we say, okay, I've had penetrative sex with somebody. But intimacy can involve anything. If I was intimate with someone, it could have been we cuddled on the couch together, or if I was intimate with somebody, it means that we held hands and walked down the street and went to dinner together. So really, intimacy is anything when we're expressing ourselves in a physical way. I think is that key piece to look at.
Oh, expressing ourselves in a physical way.
Yes, where, as if I was referring to before, with emotional intimacy, that's us expressing ourselves in an emotional way. And sometimes they overlap. It's not distinct from each other. But yes, usually sexual intimacy is how we express ourselves in a physical way, which could mean a whole host of things. Yeah,
most definitely. And today, are we going to be talking about both of them, or just emotional, or what do you think?
Really, well, we'll be talking about both of them because I think we can't really, we can't really disconnect emotional intimacy from physical intimacy. They are so intertwined and connected, and a lot of us try to disconnect them and just focus on the physical, which is what I hear a lot of clients say when they come in. They say, hey, my sex life isn't working, please fix it. And we forget about the emotional side of things and how that connects to the physical side of the relationship. So they're very intertwined and connected, and they can't be disconnected.
Perfect. And we'll be talking about both of them and how they intertwine today. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, me too.
So as we start off with understanding that intimacy is both emotional and physical, for this episode, we really want to talk about how we can build intimacy within a relationship. But what are some ways that you see as clients come in and they're asking about, like, hey, we need more physical intimacy, or we need more emotional intimacy? What are some ways that you've seen help build intimacy within a relationship?
Yes, really good question. And really what I have found that's been really helpful to build intimacy in your relationship is carving out time for it, which sometimes I get a lot of clients give me an eye roll around this because they say, what? You have to plan intimacy? That takes away the fun. That takes away the spontaneity. But really, we need to plan things. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's kind of like going to work out at the gym. If I don't plan it, if I don't put it in my schedule, it is most certainly not going to happen because everything else gets in the way.
So true.
Yes, I know, because we're super busy in our life, which we could go on a whole nother tangent on that, but I won't. But with our really busy lifestyle, with work and as kids are involved and families involved and friends and social life, all those pieces, what really helps build intimacy is carving out time for it so it can be intentional. Something I really like to refer to as intentional intimacy.
Ooh, intentional intimacy.
Yes. So we really have to be intentional about it, which, again, as I said, sometimes gets me an eye roll from clients because they think it needs to be spontaneous, which is what the media and magazines and movies really give us as a myth, is that romance and intimacy is supposed to be all about fireworks, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to come home and just want to, run into my partner's arms and have sex. And really, we're exhausted, we're busy, and everything gets in the way. We need to be intentional by setting aside time for it.
Yeah.
Which I have some suggestions around setting time aside as well, if you want to hear those.
Yeah,
too.
I would love to hear what the suggestions you have are.
Yes. So being intentional with your intimacy, I really suggest, and I do this with my partner as well, is setting that time aside, as I had mentioned. Usually we have a date night every Wednesday night. Sometimes it changes because, something happens on a Wednesday, so we need to do it on a Tuesday. But I really suggest people to set that time aside and really hold each other accountable. So it'd be, okay, maybe Wednesday night is your night, like mine and my partners, or maybe it's, Saturday morning, or it's Sunday after church, or whatever it is really setting that time aside and doing it. And I usually suggest it weekly because every other week is really disconnected. There's too much time in between.
Yeah, and that's only 2 times a month.
There you go, yes. I know, and so 2 times a month, that's not that often to really be intimate with a partner. Which then brings us to another piece of what do you do when you then get to that place? So say, hey, it's Wednesday night with my partner. How do you be intentional with that intimacy? And, really what intimacy is, as we had talked about earlier in our podcast here, is it can be emotional or it can be in the sexual realm. So sometimes it might be an emotional date. You might go out to dinner or go walk the dog, or you can watch a movie together or do a puzzle together. So it's creating that emotional connection with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be in the physical realm. All right, is that time together going to be more physical? You want to, go do a massage with each other, do a naked massage with each other, take a shower together. There's a whole host of things you could do with that.
Completely. And it sounds a lot like we keep saying intentional. And I think one of the sneakiest things that I've seen within the couples I work with is that robs from this intentional time is the electronics or the day-to-day busy life. Is there a way to continue to improve this intentional time when you have the busy day and the phone keeps going off? What ways do you suggest for couples to address the electronics and media that keeps coming in?
Yes, very, very good thought. And it's all about creating boundaries. So not only with, say, setting time aside to be intimate, that's creating boundaries in your life from all the stuff that gets in the way. But also we need to do that with the electronics. I'm definitely guilty of this too, of having my phone and taking it out and checking Pinterest or something. But really what that does is it gets in the way of connection. I think it was in your first podcast that you talked about that as well, in the way of how that impacts kids. And it does the same thing with us as with our partners. It gets in the way of that connection with each other.
Completely. And I think is what we were talking about in that first podcast as well, is that the more the electronics you use, the less emotional understanding or reciprocity you can provide to your partner or to friends. And it sounds like this is similar to what we see within couples.
Yes. Well, that availability for your partner isn't there, and you're not using that emotional side of yourself as often, so it's a little bit harder to access. And so if you're nose deep in your phone or nose deep in your iPad or in TV, it's really hard to switch over to that emotional side of yourself. So you got to give yourself a break and create boundaries around that so it doesn't seep into your relationship. And I'm not saying don't use your phone or don't watch TV. That's impractical, I think. But creating some healthy boundaries around it so it doesn't get in the way of that intimacy, because that's not what we want.
Yeah, like you're saying, carving out time for that. And that would be, at this point in time, I'm here 100% with you, not trying to tweet or text or figure out what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, setting aside time to plan for your next day and things, but saying I'm going to be with you for this many hours. As I was meeting with Gretchen Fink just at this last ASEC conference, she talks about how it's kind of a requirement she has a requirement for her couples to carve out 8 hours a week. And people look at her like you're saying, where it's like, are you insane? We do not have 8 hours in a week. And we keep talking about how the Facebook and things come up. It's really funny how our idle time seems to be used in passive time, where we're passively looking at Facebook, Instagram, or passively doing things, and then an hour or two's gone by that we just don't really recognize because it's not been intentional.
Right. Yes, we get sucked into the black hole of technology, and again, like I said, I'm guilty of that too. All of a sudden, it's an hour later, and I've been looking at some recipe on Pinterest. I'm like, what am I doing? Yes, but I think that's interesting that you said in the way of setting aside 8 hours, and I can just hear some of your listeners being like, oh my gosh, I don't have 8 hours even for anything. How am I supposed to set 8 hours aside for me and my partner? And I think I want to wind that back and say that when you're doing intentional intimacy with each other, that it doesn't have to be that huge chunk of time. The idea is at least to set aside some time for the two of you to come together and touch base in an intimate way before you then break apart and go to your job or, take the kids to daycare or what have you. And so that could be, oh my gosh, Sunday morning, we really only have a half an hour before we have to go out to the rest of our day. And so half hour is the time you have, and that's plenty. Mm-hmm. So don't feel like you have to set aside, 8 hours or 12 hours or even 4 hours.
Oh, completely. 15 minutes, 4 15-minute sections creates an hour. And throughout that during the week, again, it's all being intentional within your relationship. Exactly. Yes.
And so not putting that expectation, I think, of time is a really important one. Yeah. And building up to it. If, this week, 15 minutes is all the two of you have together, then do that 15 minutes and really try to then the next week, let's try to carve out 30 minutes with each other. Yeah. And maybe the next week, let's try to wiggle around and add a little bit more. So don't feel like you have to start with this big, huge chunk of time frame.
Oh, I love that.
Kind of like asking myself to all of a sudden go to the gym every day for an hour. It's just not going to happen. You have to build up to it.
There's been plenty of times that I've told myself that, and it just doesn't work out.
No, because it creates unrealistic expectations. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as well today, because even the idea of unrealistic expectations is just, that is a killer of intimacy, and that is something we definitely don't want to happen.
Oh, completely. And as we're talking about killer of intimacy, things that really start to decrease intimacy in a relationship, have you seen some examples within your practice that have really shot down intimacy within a relationship?
Oh, yes. And there's a ton of different examples that really get in the way of intimacy. And a really important part to look at is, again, that emotional intimacy side of things. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you're not attending to the emotional side of your relationship, you cannot expect the sexual side of your relationship to grow and thrive. It's kind of like a garden. If you're trying to grow, say, the squash in my backyard, I'm trying to grow that, I really need to create an optimal environment for that to grow in. So it's just like the sexual side of our relationships. If we really want that to grow and thrive, the emotional side really needs to also be growing and thriving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you have to create a setting, not so much creating the mood and foreplay. However, coming home and saying, well, I haven't spent much time with you. However, now I have got the sexual drive. Like, let's go be intimate together. Again, you can't just show up at the gym and be like, now I want to lose a ton of weight. You've got to prep yourself on what am I going to eat? What am I going to do? How am I going to make different choices throughout the day and be intentional with this?
Yes. Yeah, there's that word intentional again.
Yes.
And you bring this into a really good point of, say that time aside that you set for intimacy, you can't all of a sudden just jump into that space. Some of us can really, create, really good boundaries between the stress of the day or what's going on in the day, and then all of a sudden jump into that emotional or that sexual space, But for many of us, and I would say especially women, is that there needs to be this kind of gradual transition space into the intimacy realm. Mm-hmm. And that really looks at the desire side of things, because our brain is where our desire comes from. Mm-hmm. And so we really need to attune to that and not do things in our day that really decreases our desire. So those are some of the things that get in the way. Say if I've had a really stressful day, or I just ate 3 slices of pizza, or I didn't shower that day and I'm feeling really icky, those aren't things that are really going to lend itself to me being a sexual person. That's going to really turn me off. Yeah. So that gets in the way of intimacy.
Completely. So you've got to be able to set your emotional intention mood prior to the physical intimacy reactions. And especially as you're talking about this, all I can think of is clients or individuals I've met with that are like, we've got a kid, we've got a couple kids, and going from a 5-year-old that's constantly at your leg and touching, that sometimes that touch can be just completely overwhelming, and there needs to be a move from mom into sexual partner, or from dad into sexual partner, and there's got to be that shift somewhere along those lines.
Yes, definitely is a shift, and it's hard to jump from one headspace into another, and it's really hard for, say, your partner to see you from, say, dad to all of a sudden sexual lover. So it's important to create that transition space. And so like for an example, if I've had kids all over me all day and touching me all day, it's going to be really hard to then want to be touched and intimate with my partner. And so maybe one of those intentional things would be, I'm going to go take a 20-minute walk by myself and then come to that physical area. So that way I'm getting a little bit of a break and coming to the intimacy realm with more preparedness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was what you were meaning with the sense of saying, well, okay, this will be part of our cutout time, that we're just going to go take a walk where there's, the kids are down for a nap or your partner's watching the kids, that you can tag team this move into sexual intimacy.
Yes. Get creative with it and really see what works and what doesn't work. Now, I've had clients, and I've tried myself as well, to think, okay, what really helps me get into that headspace and what really doesn't help you get into that headspace, and helping each other out with it. I like that word that you use, tag team, is really helping each other out to transition into that physical intimacy place.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen the most that's been kind of frustrating for couples is that, again, coming back to the media, there is this representation of, and we'll say whether it's a heterosexual or a LGBTQ couple, that one person is the quote-unquote mom and one person's the dad or the caregiver. One's caregiver, one's going to work. And it's like, these are your jobs, and then this is my job. And child nurturing tends to be given to one individual, and that's like, well, that's your job. Whereas I like this tag team aspect of it, where if one partner comes home from work and is like, all right, sweet, we've got this, or if both are coming home from work, how are they going to manage this child or the responsibilities of the home, as well as get to that place of, if someone needs a break, being able to respect that break and communicate about it. The frustrating part about the media is what it sounds like, is that there's always a lack of communication. No one sees what happens before the scene. No one sees what happens after. They just see someone coming home, like you were saying earlier, and it's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm home from work. And it's like, honey, I've been home all day and just waiting for you. And the fire burning of 1,000 suns has been released.
Yep.
Versus the one where it's like 4 or 5 kids, and or even 1 or 2. You've got to be able to communicate what your needs are.
Yes, and I like how you say that. Yeah, in media, is we're not shown that. We're shown the right before, the middle, and the after. Not even the middle, unless you're watching maybe pornography. And even then, I think the last time I recorded a time for the sexual experience, it was like 60 seconds in the movie. Like, that's not even enough time for me to take my shoes off, let alone get into that desire space. But what you're saying is to be able to express your needs to your partner and communicate, which many of us, and this is something that I've also seen that can really get in the way of intimacy between two people. And, again, whether it's husband and wife or, lesbian partners or what have you, is we're not often told how to communicate things to each other. If we've had parents growing up who were maybe workaholics, they often don't communicate their emotions with each other. And so we take that along with us into our romantic partnerships and aren't given the skills or tools on how to do that, to communicate our needs in an effective way. And oftentimes what we do instead is either don't communicate our needs to our partner and expect them to be mind readers. I know I've been guilty of that before. And I'm like, wait, you didn't know that's what I wanted? How did you not know that? And so we often fall in the trap of either not communicating our needs, or we communicate it in a way that is from a defensive or wounded place. And then that really pulls your partner into a defensive place. And then nobody's needs are getting communicated very effectively.
Yeah.
And so it's saying, really, and to avoid those arguments, is to say, I miss you. I really need to be a little bit more intimate with you because I feel like we've been very distant lately. Or, I really would like you to watch the kids for 15 minutes before we have our intimate time because I need to just take a breather before that happens.
Completely.
So really saying it, from that internal place of I want or I need, rather than, you work too much, or, you've been on your video games too much, or you don't do this. It really, it's all about you, and you're putting blame on the other person, which is automatically going to pull them into defensive place, and nobody's going to be intimate after that.
Yeah, being defensive is not productive for sexual activity nor intimacy building.
No, definitely not. It creates a distance between people, and it does not create that, that emotional safety and trust in the person. It really just creates this just distance, I guess is the word to say it.
Yeah. I think that's what the defense, literally when we're talking about wars or any type of place where you have an offense and defense, or in sports, you're looking at defense is constantly creating space between whatever the goal is and, or the person and the opposing teammate. So you become an opposition versus a team player.
Yes. I want to do things that have, doing that, tag team or teamwork. You want to be on the same side rather than in opposition with each other. Exactly.
Yeah. So when there is this place of we want to be on the same team, or we want to be able to express to each other what's going on, do you feel that couples can express anger or disagreement within a relationship without damaging that intimate place?
Yes, I think this just goes back to what I was saying previously is, really owning what's happening on the inside of you rather than blaming the other person. So if you're angry about something, saying, I'll use myself as an example. My partner really likes to play video games, which is totally fine. And sometimes I feel hurt because I'm not getting the attention I need. And sometimes that turns into anger if I don't express my needs. Mm-hmm. And so it's going back to, instead of saying you're playing, computer games too much, it's saying, I'm feeling really angry that these games are really getting in the way of our intimacy together. So even as I say that, it, comes from a softer place. You can still express your anger or have a disagreement, but having it come from that softer place rather than that defensive place is what's going to give you some traction and have your partner actually hear you.
And so it's creating a place for the person to say, you know what, you're right. Mm-hmm. I am spending more time this way. Or actually, I've been trying to do this and this. It invites versus, well, if you just, and fill in the blank afterwards, it allows for a person to experience that.
Exactly. And so you want to, when you're having conversations with your partner, think of it as an invitation, and you want to invite them into this conversation so you can express whatever anger or disagreement you're having or hurt you might be having or need that you have. You want to invite them in a way that's inviting. You don't want to invite them in using harsh words or, being demanding or defensive, because their partner is going to be like, no, I don't even want to be part of that conversation.
Well, of course.
You want to invite them in nicely, exactly.
Is there, do we have, can we think of any examples of what would be kind of a softer startup? I think that's actually John Gottman's way of kind of talking about it, right? Is there soft startups versus harsh startups? Have you seen any ways that kind of across the board we could let our listeners know about, like, hey, maybe I'll try this tonight or try this today when I'm feeling frustrated or angry?
Yeah, really what creates that soft startup is beginning anything that you're going to say with the word I instead of you. So if you're saying, I've been really feeling very frustrated about X, Y, or Z, is going to land a lot more softly than you have been doing X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. So doing it from that I place, and I'm sure many of us have heard, doing I statements, and I don't want to beat that nail in the head, but it's so vital because you're taking ownership of what's going on for you, and that comes from a softer place. But that's hard for many of us. As I said, even for myself, sometimes it's hard to speak up for what our wants and needs are or what we're feeling. And so it might be challenging for some of your listeners to say those I statements because it takes a really good self-reflection on you rather than just blaming the other person.
Completely. And I think it goes, again, back to we're not having these conversations with kids, and no one's having, a lot of us haven't had conversations with our parents or grew up with it, and what we're growing up with is reality TV. And every time I see reality TV, it is all like, you this, you that, you didn't do this right, and obviously it's your fault, like casting blame.
Yep.
And so that's all we know. So if this is hard, that understand that you're not alone, that this is difficult for many individuals. And it's as you've been saying, it's hard for us as well to own, this is my experience. And it really ultimately seems like it can leave you vulnerable to the other person saying like, hey, I'm feeling sad that this happened. The other person could really turn and start being mean if they wanted to.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You just hit on a very important word there, which is vulnerability. And that is such a key aspect, and really at the core and heart of all relationships is that ability to be vulnerable, which is really hard because it's vulnerable. It's leaving you exposed. It's leaving you in a very vulnerable place, which creates a lot of anxiety for many people. And so as, we're talking to even say I need or I want or this is what I'm feeling, it's hard because it's very vulnerable, but it's also very necessary to get that connection and have that emotional intimacy with your partner to then allow for that sexual intimacy to grow and thrive.
Oh, completely. And so having the vulnerability, and ultimately vulnerability can sometimes invite feelings of rejection just for the sheer fact that we're learning this process from what I've seen with the couples I work with. Have you seen that in your practice as well?
Oh, that just experiencing between that vulnerability or that fear of rejection?
Yeah, the fear of rejection or feeling like they've been vulnerable and the partner's not necessarily practiced, or where they're both learning how to respond to each other in a new way, and someone says something that's hurtful or feels rejective. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes, all the time. I mean, I think that's something that we're all always experiencing and navigating in our lives. It's something that I really work with couples. It's based on the emotionally focused therapy created by Sue Johnson.
Oh, nice.
That really looks at vulnerability and how can we express that to our partners in a way that's soft and that in a way that they can receive it too. And that is hard because we're not taught how to talk to each other. We're not taught how to be vulnerable. And if we've tried to be vulnerable in the past and it didn't go very well, that's where that feeling of rejection comes in. And we might be very timid and tentative to be vulnerable again, either in this current relationship or maybe we've been burned in the past. So that vulnerability can become really scary for many of us. And I see that all the time in sessions. And it happens for me too.
Oh, yeah. It happens for me as well. It can be really very difficult to be vulnerable. And vulnerability can show up in a sense of saying you're sorry, in sense of addressing what you're experiencing, and really being sincere with the other person. Like, this is what my experience is, and I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying this is what I'm experiencing at this moment. How can we work through it?
Exactly. And even as you're saying, it's not that you're a bad person. What's hard, though, is when because we get caught, Sue Johnson even calls it a dance. We get caught in this dance of where we might be stuck in this blamer place, or we might feel that it's our fault within ourselves. And so that's often what I help people do, is really disconnect that and take ownership of what they're feeling and not casting blame on the other person. Because then that just creates a negative cycle, which kills intimacy in all different realms.
Oh, blame kills intimacy.
Oh, yes. Blame definitely kills intimacy. And yeah, that's a big one. If we have blame or if we have resentment, oftentimes resentment can really live within us. If we resent our partner for, say, working too much, or resent our partner for, always showing up late, or there can be a whole host of things that we could be resentful for. But that also is a complete killer for intimacy. It's like not watering the garden, like taking the whole everything out of the garden. It's not going to grow intimacy at all.
Is there a way to detect when you are feeling resentful, when you're feeling resentful towards your partner?
Good question. I think in the way of, if you're feeling resentful, a good place to look at is the thoughts that are going in your mind. If you are really feeling, I'm frustrated that my partner's doing this, or I hate it that he did that, if those are the thoughts that are coming in your mind and you haven't yet expressed it to your partner in those soft, vulnerable ways, then that is a really big sign that resentment is starting to build up inside of you. And it's important to nip that in the bud before it becomes too big.
Totally. As I've seen some couples, because the resentment seems to kind of sneak up on some individuals, where it almost feels as though they're saying, yeah, well, I'm just not going to express this because I don't want to cause a fight and I want to be in love with my partner, and it's a small thing, I'll let it go. But it's not being let go. It's continuing to be like, well, you did this last week, and he did this week, and she did that this week. And we start to hold on to that. And it can be a sneaky thing from what I've seen.
Yes. Oh, it can definitely be sneaky. And that's, it is hard to detect sometimes. But if you're starting to keep tallies of what your partner's doing, it's probably a pretty big sign that resentment is starting to build. And, I want to address something you had said just a moment ago about, it's this little thing, so, I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just going to let that go. But in relationships, I don't think anything is too little. I think everything is important. It should all be said. You kind of, I guess, to that whole phrase of pick your battles, but if it's important to you, it needs to be said. And it might feel like it's silly, or your partner might not understand, but it's important to say. Everything is important, even the little stuff.
Even the little stuff. Nice.
Exactly. And, I think, even the idea of the little stuff is also what's important for making sure of building connection with people. It doesn't have to be these big things. It's the little stuff that I feel really matters. And I think that would be important to talk about as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go into that.
Yes. And so, even as we talk about this idea of intimacy, and, back to the idea of carving out time, it doesn't have to be, 8 hours a week. It can be 15 minutes, 30 minutes. So it's the little pieces that really build up. And it's the same way with really building connection between people. And, I'm sure you've had, probably been helping people in your practice as well with building connection, I presume.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And, some of the things that I think is really important is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 love languages.
Oh, most definitely.
You've heard of? Most definitely, yes. And I think that's one of the really key aspects of doing the little stuff in your relationship to make a big impact. I don't know if your listeners know about the 5 love languages.
In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a reference point to the 5 love languages. It's a free quiz. Well, quiz. It's starting to sound like a magazine thing, but it's a free resource that you have that you essentially take. I can't remember how many questions there are, like 36 maybe?
That sounds about right. I can't remember off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
So there's so many questions, and it tells you that there's 5 different ways that you like to experience love and feel most experience with love, and how you show love. And each of those are gift giving, physical touch. And man, I might not have it all memorized.
Yeah, no, the other 3, you got it. It's the gift giving, it's physical touch, which is important to note that doesn't mean sexual touch. It could be putting your hand on your partner while you're watching TV. And then there's also acts of service. So say filling up your partner's gas tank or something. And then another one is the words of affirmation. So saying, oh my gosh, you totally kicked butt on that project at work. And so that would be words of affirmation. And then that last one is quality time. So, and that could look like so many different things. It could be hanging out and doing a puzzle together. That might be quality time. Or it could be, really going for a walk with you and your partner in the pup and talking about the day. So yes, the 5 love languages is something that, I tell every couple because it's a really good foundation, an example of those little things that build up to big impact. And to really recognize, thank you for remembering that there's a quiz online and offering that to your listeners, is to identify what your love language is and what your partner's love language is. Because the way that I experience love can be completely different than what my partner experiences love.
Exactly.
We want to make sure that we're speaking their language. And this is where I see a lot of couples that they get really frustrated because they say, well, I keep doing all these things around the house and I don't know why, but she's still mad at me. I don't get it. And it's because the love language that he's trying to direct to her is not how she's feeling loved. Really what she might be wanting is him to stop doing stuff around the house, but just sit across the table and have a good chat. It's that quality time.
Yeah. And I see a lot of clients and couples that come in and say, they've heard of the love language and they've taken the quiz and that's been supportive. And even then still needing some extra support and saying, I don't know how to gift give because that's not the language that I speak. And a lot of it is just like learning a new language in of itself is you've got to learn how, gift giving and presenting or giving service or quality time and moving through those different ways of how to show that. And a lot of times, if you're not in the same love language with your partner, you have to take extra attention into how you can show that. And again, bringing up, it doesn't have to be the media. It doesn't have to be like a movie where you know exactly what your partner wants, but you need to be able to say, oh, how can I best give you gifts? What would you like in your quality time? How can I approach you with wanting to show you love?
Exactly. And it goes that idea. I'm glad you brought that up again of, we're not mind readers. And if we haven't had practice in a certain language of love, we're going to need some practice. And so you might fumble sometimes and you might not get it exactly right. And you might need to set reminders on your phone. It's kind of like if you are learning a love language or a language, you're going to be having note cards with the words written down of how to say these different languages. So it's giving yourself some time and patience, not only within yourself, but your partner while they're learning your love language and while you're learning theirs, if it's not the same or if you haven't had practice in it before. So it's being patient.
And I think this comes back to the point of a lot of times we feel like we need to go into these relationships that we should know what our partner wants, what our partner needs, and that we are supposed to be the one that provides it all for them up front and understand all this, when in reality, a relationship is consistently changing. There's always new parts in a relationship, and therefore practice is the biggest part of it. We're not arriving to a perfect relationship.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You're exactly right, is we aren't arriving at a perfect relationship. There is no perfect relationship. And just as you said, it's always evolving. We're in different stages of life. We're going to be where we don't have kids, where you do have kids, where some family member passes away, and that's going to add a different dynamic as well. So things are always changing and flowing and evolving. which is why, as we were talking about before, that communication is so important, because what worked before might not work now.
Yeah, completely. And we can see that even in, and I don't do too much with pop culture stuff. However, I have seen a lot on the Jay-Z and Beyonce couple, whereas years ago, it was like, this is the power couple. You couldn't get even more like amazing than this couple's got right now. And recently, it sounds like they're going through their own turmoil of, how are we going to work this? How does our relationship work? And that doesn't show weakness or that a relationship is failing. It just shows, wow, this is a time for us to hunker down and learn and be together again, even though it's difficult.
Exactly. And it's always okay to be in that place of discomfort and feeling lost or needing some help too. I mean, even for us professionals, I've seen a therapist. I still fumble. I still sometimes don't know what I'm doing because it's always changing, and that it's okay for that to happen. It's okay to seek help, and it's okay not to know all the answers, and it's okay not to be perfect, because nobody is.
So well spoken. That's very important to know. No one's perfect. Therapists need therapists. It's important to have. I've had my own therapist as well. It's an important part of being human as well as being in a relationship, is you need to be able to say, hey, I really don't know what's going on and we need some extra help. And that's totally fine to go after.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because nobody gives us a guidebook on how to do life, and especially how to do relationships. I mean, sometimes we get a good example with our parents, but a lot of times we don't. And nobody tells us what to do. We all kind of fumble around and try to figure it out. It's not like, math where you X, Y, and Z, you know exactly what's supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. Relationships are way too variable for that.
Completely. Some of the things that I've been looking into when it comes to, specifically with Gottman, I follow some of his stuff on Twitter as well as on Facebook. And
with who, sorry?
Oh, good, John Gottman.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he's got a couple things that I saw pop up on my feed just a little bit ago, and I figured we could talk a little bit about it as well. But some of the connection building practices they recommend are 6 seconds of kissing in the morning. So before you leave, instead of the peck that's like, hey, okay, bye, but actually having an intimate 6 second kiss before you leave.
Yes.
Some of the other ones are expressing gratitude. So being able to really go out of your way, especially on things that you feel, I see a lot of couples are like, well, that's your responsibility to, like, when you mow the lawn, that is your responsibility. When you change the child's diaper, that is your responsibility. And switching that just a little bit into saying, thank you so much for mowing the lawn. It looks great. Wow. That kid was really stinky, and I really appreciate you taking care of the diaper.
Yes, definitely gratitude, because even if it might be that person's quote-unquote job, or there's been a prearranged agreement that, so-and-so does the lawn every week, that doesn't mean that you don't get to say, thank you so much for doing that. Gratitude really creates that level of connection and emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy.
Completely. And some of the other things to think of is the non-sexual touching. A lot of couples tend to be, again, with all their things that they've got going on in life, that the only times they really spend time with each other physically is either cuddling on the couch or building up to a sexual experience and not really experiencing the other partner's body.
Right.
And we can do that through sensate focus. Like if you went to a therapist, they could talk you through sensate focus therapy, or even I love something that I love to have partners learn is how to give a hand massage or a foot massage, and really spending time being with your partner, where you're rubbing their hand and learning what parts of their hand they enjoy with touch and don't enjoy, and what feels good and what doesn't, and spending just a little time giving a massage and spending time receiving that massage. That can be just as powerful building connection and intimacy as any other form of being together.
Oh, most certainly. And I think many of us kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of poo-poo that and say, oh, foot massage, that's not intimacy. That doesn't count. But, oh, my gosh, it most certainly does. That closeness and connection and really feeling each other's skin or giving a hand massage, or one of my partners, I remember back in the day, he loved head massages. That was his favorite. And it's just another way of connecting to each other, and without going into that connection or that physical space with the expectations that anytime we touch each other, it has to lead to an orgasm, because that's just impossible.
Completely. That creates so many avenues for failure that leads down the road to just sexual frustration and a whole nother topic that we should probably have on the show.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah, it can create the failure piece of, all right, well, I'm going to give you a hug, and then if I kiss my partner and they start to feel as though like, well, sweet, we're kissing, and now kissing leads into genital touching, and genital touching leads to penetration and then to orgasm. Mm-hmm. And so much anxiety can come from experiencing that, or depression can come from being like, oh no, what if we don't reach orgasm? Or what if they want to have sex and I'm not in the mood right now?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that is something that I see all the time with people coming into my office, is this big expectation that we put on physical intimacy. And again, I'm going to blame the media. I mean, I don't want to point fingers, but it's kind of easy to with this one, is the media tells us that, oh my gosh, we go from step A, B, C, D, all the way to the O, and that's what's supposed to happen. Just you said, okay, kiss happens, and then that has to lead into the hugging, and that has to lead into us taking our clothes off, and this is supposed to lead us into genital touching, and it's supposed to lead into penetration, and then we're supposed to have an orgasm, and oh my gosh, a lot of us are told that we're supposed to have it at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Which is so much pressure on ourselves. And then if it doesn't go well, or to use the word that you had said, if we feel like we've failed because in that we, didn't have an orgasm, or, an erection didn't happen this time. Mm-hmm. And so we feel like we failed, and then our inclination to do it all over again the next time is going to decrease. We're going to be like, no, I don't want to go into that intimacy space, because last time it happened, I felt like a failure and I got filled with anxiety. So I'm just not going to go in there. Nope, not going to happen.
Nope. Yeah, and why would you want to go into that place again either, especially if you start to feel like you're doing this by yourself, because this shame or this anxiety can create this secret place that you're not sharing with your partner and you're not sharing with others, and that just adds to anxiety or adds to feelings of inadequacy, which can really lead to aversion to sexual intimacy or even emotional intimacy. It can really feel isolating.
Yep. Exactly. And it's just, that big word, anxiety. And what's the word that you just used? You said, it's just a sense of avoidance of all of that, because you're not going to want to go into that place because it's filled with so much pressure. And that is, unfortunately, one of the big ways that we're shown, are told, or the impression that we're getting of how to have sex is this pressure-ridden, feeling like a failure, anxiety place, which is not what we're supposed to be feeling when we're being intimate with our partner.
No.
Right? And so what I really like to offer to clients, and I want to offer this to your listeners as well, is kind of do a mind shift. Going into that intentional intimacy place, and going into that place not with this expectation that performance needs to happen, because that's where the idea of failure and pressure and anxiety lives. So we don't want to be intimate in a way that there's performance. What we want to do instead is enter into that intimate, oh my gosh, I cannot speak. What we want to do instead is really enter in from this pleasure perspective. And, the way I like to look at it is, those box of chocolates where there's all these different flavors.
Oh, yeah. Hershey's Pot of Gold
yeah.
or whatever.
I don't know what the name of it is, but I know there's one, chocolates with cherries in them, there's chocolates with caramels in them, there's chocolates with nuts in them, there's all these different flavors. And no matter which one you grab, unless, I don't like cherries, so I don't grab the cherry one, but you just grab onto something and really enjoy the pleasure of it. And so it's kind of the same idea as what I'm getting at in the way of doing that intentional intimacy and not doing it in a way where it has to be a performance. Entering into that place where it's just follow the pleasure. If all you want to do that time that you lay out with each other is to cuddle naked, great. That's your intimate time together. And if it's pleasurable, I hope it's pleasurable, great. That's what the quote-unquote goal is to follow the pleasure. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to lead to penetration, and it doesn't have to lead to orgasm. You just follow the pleasure of what you want to do and negotiate that with your partner. Yeah,
negotiating that with your partner, being with them, and the goal is to build closeness, which is what intimacy is, that emotional, physical closeness, not to fulfill a requirement of what should happen in a relationship.
Exactly. Yes, because it's not, even as you say, the requirement. The requirement is to negotiate with each other. Be like, hey, what do you want to do tonight? And, oh, you want to do this? Let's talk about that. Let's figure out what we want to do, rather than go down this expected path of, as we said before, the performance place. Because that's, sometimes you might go down that way, but sometimes you want to do something different.
Yeah. And if you want to do something different, again, that's a vulnerable piece, as we talked about earlier, being able to express, I would like to try something different. But being able to step into a little uncomfortable position of vulnerability and trust can really increase the experience that you have intimate-wise with your partner. Taking that risk can be very scary, can be very important. And receiving the vulnerability from your partner, being open to your partner coming to you with something that is vulnerable, is so important as well. You need to be able to receive and give vulnerability.
Yes, and that's a very key point too, is that giving and receiving. Not only is it really difficult to, open up and be vulnerable yourself, but it's also very difficult too sometimes to be open to receive that vulnerability from your partner. And talking about sex is a really very vulnerable place. That's why many of us don't do it, right? And that's why many of us fall into that trap of that performance model of sex, because it's kind of the assumed way that it happens without having to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
But talking about it means that then you both can actually get what you want and negotiate what that looks like. And, I have a really good tool I would like to offer to your listeners. It's something I call, I call it the rain check exercise, that can be applied to different things. Mm-hmm. And it's how to negotiate what it is that you want to do in the intimacy realm. And so say my partner comes to me and it's our Wednesday night intimate night, and he says, Chelsea, I would really like to have penetrative sex tonight. And, this is where, I can really take a breath and check in with myself and say, is this what I want to do? And if the answer is yes, then great, we're good. We know what we're going to do for the evening. Mm-hmm. Or if I take a breath and really, look into myself, and I'm kind of like, I don't really want to do that tonight. I'd rather do something else. And so what I would say to him, and the tool that your listeners can use as well for their partner, is you want to say thank you. So you really want to acknowledge what your partner was wanting to do. Mm-hmm. So I would say, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to, do that tonight. And then the next part of that is you really want to take ownership of what's going on for you. So telling the truth. So I would say, oh my gosh, honey, thank you so much for wanting to do that tonight. And you know what, I'm just so exhausted from work today. I had, big long list of clients, and I just don't think I'm up for that tonight. I'm telling the truth of what's happening for me. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece is either negotiate a different time for that to happen or a different activity. So I could say, thank you, honey, so much for wanting to do that. I'm really tired tonight because I had such a busy day. Could we do that tomorrow morning because I would feel more rested? Or I could say, you know what, penetration's really not on the table for me, but, maybe we could, play around and use some of our toys. How does that sound?
Oh, so offering different activities or different ways that they can then say, oh, yeah, actually, I would like penetrative sex. However, I could also go for this, or I could also go for that. Exactly. It's really, and that's where that sexual, the pleasure of sex rather than that performance of sex is, really negotiating what you both find pleasurable and seeing what activities they are. And that also, it might mean that you might need to do a rain check and say, you know what, honey, that sounds really great and I'm really tired. Can you maybe give me an hour to wind down and then I'll be ready for that? Yeah. And following through with whatever the rain check involves.
Yes, very key piece. Thank you for saying that, is really following through. So if I do a rain check and I tell my partner, I really need just an hour to take a break, unwind, I didn't have enough time to do that today, then now I'm the one who's responsible to then turn to my partner and say, okay, the hour's done. I'm now here I am, I'm ready. Maybe I'm not ready for that penetration, but maybe we can negotiate that different activity.
Yeah, and as for the partner, this is a perfect place of what I was trying to say a little earlier, is that the fact that your partner doesn't want to have penetrative sex or doesn't want to participate in something that you would like to do that night or to build intimacy does not mean that they are rejecting you. And this can be a place where you feel that rejection or possibly think, oh my gosh, my partner doesn't want me or love me. And you can express that and have a conversation about it.
Yes, exactly. That's where a place that rejection can most certainly live, because we might think, oh my gosh, wait, my partner doesn't want to do this with me. Does that mean they don't like me? Oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? It can go, into this really anxiety-ridden place. When really, heck, we might have had a really long day at work and, we want to be intimate, but maybe not to that level.
Yeah, and that gives you a chance, or the partner a chance to be able to say, this is not about you, this is this experience I've had, or I'm feeling this way, or I'm feeling that way, and opening up the ability to talk about your needs, the frustrations that have happened, and really what's going on versus you going down your spiral of shame and I'm a bad person and they don't want to be with me, and the other person being like, crap, I just made them feel bad because I'm not willing to participate with them, and then defenses start to happen and pull apart is what occurs.
Exactly. And it keeps going back to that piece of the vulnerability and taking ownership for what you're feeling. And this is something that rain check exercise really does well, is really honors the other person by saying, honey, thank you so much for, reaching out to me. This can happen too if, someone initiates sexual intimacy more than maybe another person, is they often feel a big sense of rejection. But if you turn that around and say, oh, honey, thank you so much for, initiating and or wanting to be intimate with me, and, then you take ownership. I'm feeling, super sad today because I had a fight with one of my best friends. I need a little bit of time, or can we go out to dinner instead? So it's just really taking ownership and honoring not only yourself, but the other person.
Honoring the other person and honoring yourself. I love that, Chelsea.
Yes.
I really appreciate you being on the show, especially as we've talked about the rain check exercise and the 5 love languages and building all this intimacy within relationships. I would love to have you on the show again, Chelsea.
I would love to be back. You are a great podcast host.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think as time goes on, we ought to continue on with this conversation specifically about failure and orgasm. You have a blog article that is E is for expectations, pressures of sexual performance, which is on your blog at, is it drchelseaholland.com?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, and so you have that blog on there that I would love to talk to you about, as well as building intimacy when there's a betrayal within the relationship.
Oh, yes, That is definitely a big one. And I wish we had had time for that today, but yes, that could definitely be a full podcast of itself.
I agree. And I think that we'll have you on for one of those if you're up to it.
Yes, and I do want to say something with that is just to give any listeners hope that if they have experienced a betrayal, that there is hope and it is possible to heal from it. And we won't go into details about how that works today, but that there is hope for that. So don't feel like all is lost.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you again for being on the Birds and Bees podcast. This has been a real treat.
Oh, you are most welcome, and I can't wait to be back.
Yeah, we'll talk to you another time. Thanks. This has been another episode of the Birds and Bees podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions about the show, comments, or questions you would like addressed in another episode, please give us a call at 385-449-1818. Leave your voicemail and your question, or you can also email us at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com or visit us online at birdsandbeespodcast.com.